Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I am pleased to present two of the most interesting LA cats you will ever meet. Both are as comfortable in the studio as they are in the boardroom, and both are used to being the smartest people in any room they enter. I promise you will leave smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. The second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones, and ask questions of our speakers. Also, and this is very important, this goes for you too, speakers, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not continue to do this for free. Special thanks to MedJet, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Tennessee Brew Works, and Better Than Booze. So let's get down to business. Today, we welcome Ori Winokur. As head of music and sounds at Artlist, Ori directs a global team of 50-plus professionals and thousands of artists across 40-plus countries. Since 2019, he's built Artlist Originals into one of the world's leading production entities, releasing over 2,000 tracks annually and pioneering sub-label strategies that multiplied engagement and boosted music revenue tenfold. He also launched Artlist's distribution and rights management division, now a multi-million-dollar engine empowering artists to monetize globally through YouTube, CID, PROs, and DSPs. By embedding AI tagging, data analytics, and smart search, Ori redefined artist onboarding, catalog management, and discovery, setting new industry benchmarks. Earlier at Musico, he was one of the first to design AI-driven music tools, including a patented online digital audio workstation that foreshadowed the generative music revolution. His 20-plus years in the industry span writing, producing, touring, and launching global acts such as Asaf Abadan, Lola Marsh, and Yezekiel Raz. Sorry, I butchered that, Ori. Today, he's focused on scaling teams, pioneering AI music innovation, and building creator-first ecosystems that shape the future of music. And joining Ori is Jeff Ponchick. Jeff is CEO and founder of Mogul. Mogul helps artists find all their missing royalties and registrations in under 5 minutes of setup. Prior to starting Mogul, Jeff founded Repost Network, which was acquired by SoundCloud and became the underlying technology for SoundCloud for artists. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform today. Take it away, boys.
Thanks, Tom.
Hi,
Appreciate you.
everybody.
Yeah. How you doing, Ori? How's life?
I'm good, Jeff. Good to see you. We
Yeah,
have a long overdue lunch to do, so we did this instead.
I know, right? Like the last place was the Dialogue Cafe, I think, right?
Exactly,
In
in
West
West Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Yeah,
Yeah, good breakfast burrito.
that's true. The best one in
Yeah,
town, maybe.
possibly. I feel like I just learned a lot about you in that intro.
Oh, wow, thank you.
Yeah, like I obviously know about like the music management side of things and the artlist side, but I didn't know about the DAW experience. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually, when writing this bio, I think I remembered things about myself I almost forgot because I've
Yeah.
had the chance to do so many different things in music throughout my life, and I'm, of course, very fortunate about that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about it because Musico is something we did now 9 years ago, I think, and we actually built an online DAW with a lot of AI features incorporated. And I guess it was a bit ahead of its game, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think for me, I think we're in a very interesting year when it comes to AI, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but I thought we should leave it towards the end of our conversation because
Yeah.
it might steal the entire hour. But yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's definitely the hot topic for sure. And I've definitely got some hot takes on that too. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are trying to build the AI DAW. There's like a lot of companies emerging, but yeah, we can chat about that later for sure.
Absolutely. For me, it was also my first experience kind of getting out of the studio and working in a high-tech environment. We were a small startup, and I was kind of like the product manager there, like, making sure everybody's synced and working together to create the product. So it was a very interesting experience for me professionally and personally.
Yeah. Have you always been in music, or have you done things outside of music at all? Just out of
So honestly,
curiosity.
I've always been into music before I even remember myself. I mean, my parents keep saying that I used to point on records when I was like a year old and just kept listening to
Mm,
records as a very young child. And I honestly never remember myself even thinking about doing anything other than music. I mean, for me, it was like this really clear idea in my head that that's the only thing that I'm into. Sometimes I think it might come later in life that all of a sudden I'll just want to do something else. But if music keeps drawing me in time after time from various angles. And again, I feel the most fortunate thing in my journey is I had the chance to be in so many different angles of this industry. And I guess it also gives me a very wide perspective about everything. Um, and yeah, but there was never a question to me if that's what I'm going to do or not.
yeah. Yeah, it's cool. It's like when I left SoundCloud, my co-founder and I, Joey, we took a year off, just like a sabbatical, and we didn't know if we were going to get back into music or not. We were like, oh, maybe this is our opportunity to like get out. And we even like looked at like maybe like we looked at really weird spaces. Like we almost bought a company that like or figured out how to like finance to buy a company that provided trash cans to construction sites. Like we were like we got like we were like we really like looked at a bunch of different spaces and then we just got pulled back in. It's like we love the people, love the space. You know,
I think I
industry's got it,
remember.
it's got its problems, but it's like they're fun problems to try and solve. And um yeah, I don't know, just the whole lifestyle of it is very and I think I'm having a lot more fun, believe it or not, doing royalty accounting type tech at Mogul than I probably would delivering trash cans to construction sites. But yeah.
Yeah, which actually, I mean, I
So
think we met around that time, like on your
yeah,
last year or two at SoundCloud, and I
yeah,
remember us talking, and I think it was also kind of interesting for me to ask you what led you to build Mogul, because I think Mogul for me is a super groundbreaking idea. And I even remember that when I saw it launched, I didn't fully understand how you made it happen.
yeah,
But when we met for the first time in person in LA and you explained it to me, I felt like it was such a genius idea. And I feel like most people in this room would probably love to hear about it. So I would
yeah.
like to know kind of what drove you to make the decision to build this thing, because I think you were very sharp on to witness and see a pain firsthand and then find an amazing way to solve it. So I thought maybe you can talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. And you bring up a really good point. It's like I got all this feedback when we launched it. People were like, "Oh, it's Jeff Ponchick's royalty thing." And like no, like I don't know, I feel like we could have done a better job like with like the marketing, the product marketing and stuff like that. But it's a very hard thing to kind of like conceptualize the actual like problem. But anyway, yeah. But yeah, usually when people like actually touch the product and get inside it and use it, like when they kind of have the light bulb moment, they're like, "Oh, whoa, this is awesome." But yeah, I mean, like the story is, started Repost, grew it profitably, sold it to SoundCloud. It became SoundCloud for Artists. Ended up staying at SoundCloud for 3 years, which was a lot longer than sort of like the typical golden handcuffs you get when you sell a startup to a bigger company. So it was a really positive and great experience, in my opinion. But yeah, like I said, like Joey, my business partner on Repost or co-founder, as he's also my co-founder on Mogul, we yeah, we left SoundCloud and we both took a year off. And I think it was partially just due to burnout. I think it's just going from like starting something to selling it to being at the parent company was just it's really hard. And so we took a year off, which was if anyone can afford to do it, an amazing thing to do. And then, yeah, like I said, we didn't know if we were going to get back into music or not. We looked at maybe buying like boomer businesses, trying to like automate it with tech. We had a couple other ideas, but what ended up happening was in that year off, we just started catching up with our friends who are musicians or lawyers or managers. And we had this like extensive knowledge of like basically royalty data. We had built a digital distributor from scratch, and we just started like I almost started like it actually started out as like very organically. It started out as I did a couple of consulting gigs where people were effectively paying me to just like
Mm.
help them like audit, do desk audit, like audit their royalties, audit their business. And we kind of came across the problem, which was like when we would do these sort of desk audits for folks, the average artist had like 7 to 10 different logins to 7 to 10 different royalty portals that paid them. And it was just a mess, right? Like keeping on track of your sound exchange and your performing rights organization. And you probably worked with like a few different digital distributors, right? We realized we kind of had the aha moment. We were like, there's nothing really pulling it all together, right? Because if you're an artist, like you don't care that the publishing's over here and the sound recording is over here. You just want to know if you're getting paid or not, right? And we realized there wasn't really a product in market that like tied it all together. And so that's what we initially tried to do. The product comparison is we tried to build it, if you're familiar with like Rocket Money for the music industry, where you actually link your universal music portal. You literally link your ASCAP portal. We log in as you, grab your earnings data, your catalog data, in some cases your contracts, and we centralize it. So you have all your royalties and registrations in one place. And then we find everything that's missing. The goal is in under 5 minutes of setup, and then we help you fix the issues. And so kind of going back to like what that consulting thing was, it was just basically automating the exact same thing that people were initially asking us to do. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think, artists who listen to what we tell them to do often make like usually 20% more in
Mhm.
revenue. So we've been around long enough to see that type of feedback. And yeah, it's funny. People ask me like, when did you start it? And it's kind of hard for me to like pinpoint when it actually started, because in that year off, it was just this very like slow, organic kind of like re-entry, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So
But so first of this is amazing, I think, and I think for me, I've been witnessing the same problem for many years. But I think you say it like it's a very simple thing, but I think you found a brilliant solution. And in a way, what you did is what's now happening in the AI landscape with all the AI agents.
yeah,
Because you basically build agents or bots that can actually operate instead of a person and go and do your audits for you and then
right.
centralize it under one roof. And I think, I mean, I wouldn't want to underestimate how much of a big invention this is because again, nobody did it. I think, by the way, I've witnessed in the past actually few weeks, a lot of different royalty related startups are popping out all of a sudden, which is very interesting to see because I think with vibe coding and the fact that it's easier to build agents now, a lot of people are trying to solve this problem that's been very obvious for anybody who tried to, to manage a publishing catalog or a royalty collection mechanism of any sort. But again, it was very hard to reach a solution. And I think in a way you were the first to ever do it. So I remember the moment you explained it to me, it like blew my mind, that you actually built a bot that can log in instead of someone and, fetch all the data and then bring it into one portal. And of course, now you can leverage it to have insight.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
also working a lot with these kind of data and portals, it's so hard to make sense out of it all. So this is like, it's not a simple thing, although you make it sound very simple because you built it.
No, it's funny. Like the I reference Rocket Money if people are watching are familiar with Rocket Money, but like we also had to build Plaid, if you know what Plaid is. So like Plaid is a way to like in the banking industry to like connect your
Yeah.
bank account to Venmo, right? Like so it was really, really hard. Like I actually don't know. It's really great now because we have something that's like defensible, that like a piece of technology that no one has. But building a connection into Universal Music Portal versus Sony Music Portal versus Symphonic, right? Like each of these companies have different like levels of sophistication around their product and their reporting.
Yeah.
And to just we support over 250 or 300 different companies right now. And it was a nightmare to build. And when we launched, we only had like 20 or 30
I
companies live.
remember.
So it was one of those things where like someone would be like, oh, this is cool, what's this? And if we didn't support the company that they worked with, it was just they hit a brick wall from a product standpoint. And so it kind of like took us a full year to actually like get this to a point where like anyone can come in off the street and it would like probably work for them. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that it's not as easy as it sounds, but yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like I always say I'm a tech person in music. I'm not a music person in music. And for me and for us, right, at the Mogul team, it's like we want to build technology. We want to build interesting like forward thinking technology that's like never been done before. And I will say one thing, we're not the first person to have done it. There was a company called Hi-Fi that got acquired by Tidal, had a version of this. So they were actually sort of the inspiration. So like shout out to
Oh, I didn't know
Damien
that.
and the people who built that. But yeah, like I guess we're like one of sort of two companies who can sort of we can technically do what we say what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we're talking too much about me. I can ask you a question. So Artlist has been, from the outside, it seems to me like quite the rocket ship growth over the past few years. And how long have you been there again?
It's now 7 years or even a bit
Wow,
more. I started our this mutual discussion started 8 years ago when Artlist was basically right just starting off, like the first year out there. Um, Yeah, I mean, Artlist is a pretty crazy story because it started with a very simple idea, very small operation, and it just took off so quickly. And I joined, like, I would say, stage two. They basically had like 300 songs and were the first in the world to offer subscription-based music licensing for video creators. And I keep seeing like keep saying that 8 years ago is before TikTok was part of our world. Like content creators were just an emerging market. It was very small. I knew very little about it when I joined Artlist myself. And I think they kind of hit a nail on the head because it was just a great model for this new age of video creators. And basically, Artlist was profitable after 2 weeks on air with very, very
amazing.
minimal marketing and organic kind of word to mouth onboarding process. And that's also when they called me up because they were like, we're getting all these thousands of users, but we only have 300 songs. And I was back then a very, very
Yeah,
busy producer in Israel. And I also kind of had the chance to produce so many different styles and genres of music. So I think I was on the top of their list of someone that could actually handle this kind of global music operation.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, so I joined very early on it, and it was a very interesting journey in it still is, I guess, and in so many different layers. I mean, on the artistic side, for me, it was about, learning about this new age of creators, which was emerging 8 years ago. And was like, for me, like witnessing a new art form emerging, because, it wasn't your standard filmmaking or TV work or any kind of video work that's been done before the YouTube generation. And it was so exciting to see. For me, it felt a lot like how the independent musicians started emerging when the digital revolution started with music, and I saw a lot of like parallel worlds there, and also how Artlist is basically a bridge between independent musicians and independent video creators. And I saw a great opportunity there. And yeah, I mean, you can ask a lot of questions, so I'm wondering what's more interesting for
yeah,
you. So on the musical side, so I started by building what I call the creative infrastructure to how we can build or create this catalog for content creators, which was very interesting because we had and still do have, of course, all the data behind the scene of our own platform and a lot of like a sense of what's happening in the content creator space. Um, and that was actually kind of the easy thing for me because I came from that world, and it was the interesting part was I started seeing a lot of business opportunities and decided to build what I now call a Sync First record label and publishing house for our catalog, which grew tremendously since. So we basically built like a distribution pipeline to streaming and a whole publishing operation, and that's also why I found Mogu so interesting because I struggled for years to build our metadata operations and being able to
yeah.
manage our catalog and optimize our collection worldwide. I think now 7 years later is the first year we actually see it really happening, so it took a very long time.
Hmm.
Uh,
And what do you think was the like thing that made it finally happen? 7 years of trying, like what was the big like lesson or learning that, got you there, if you don't mind me asking?
no, of course, I think it's an accumulating process. So I mean, everything was so small in the beginning. I was doing first year at Artist, I did everything on my own. So I managed a lot of producers to create music for the catalog, but also try to initiate this label and publishing side of things. I keep saying I used to produce music with my right hand and distribute and register metadata with my left. I used to sit down
Sure.
every night and get all the music out on Spotify and and set up all the metadata collection and everything because we had no infrastructure for that. So I think the first struggle was just kind of trying to to align everything in terms of being able to collect the highest standard of metadata and managing the catalog and building the internal operation to do it. And then I did the step of registering ourselves as a publishing company at BMI. That was the first PRO that we registered under. And I think my vision, which ended up happening gladly, is that I felt like there has to be a lot of uncollected or undistributed collection out there because we're generating so much usage through
Right.
artlists. So my assumption was that the moment our catalog will be properly registered, we'll start getting all these reports and seeing what's happening. But of course, the first year was just a process of setting it up. We had to re-sign our artists. I redid our entire agreement with writers and creators. We collected all the metadata. We kind of built the operation of how we can collect and register. And again, 7 years ago, there wasn't any tool to help us with that. So we had to do everything on our own. I
Right.
think I learned more about Excel scripts than ever in my life in that year. Uh,
Yeah.
and then what eventually happened was once we had our catalog starting to be set up, and of course our catalog keeps growing. So the more we grow and the more the company grows, and we'll speak about that in a second as well, we get a lot more usage. So it's like that's also the vision I saw that we're having like this, wheel effect or magic circle effect that we keep growing, and if we keep building our publishing site, it will keep growing with us. Because
Right.
the more music we make, the more catalog we manage, and the more users we have, the more placements we generate. So, um, and then what happened was, and it's interesting because it's also an evolving story, even after when what I'm going to tell you about. So, I think after about 2 years of managing it all on our own, we started seeing more and more revenue. It was still pretty small scale, but then we were approached by a few different admin companies. I think admin companies keep monitoring and seeing if there are new publishers that are gaining like interesting revenues. And we were approached by a French company called RDB, which you just met yesterday here in LA. They're here at
Yep.
PNC. And we ended up partnering with them. And the one thing that I think that they're doing very differently, and that's the main reason I was a big advocate to sign with them and not with anybody else. And I also think it's the secret key to how you can manage copyrights in our day and age is that we have both masters and pub. And in the digital scape, you can use masters to find matches for basically anything that happens online and even offline, like on analog broadcast. And they're basically the only admin company that I know of, at least, that actually does that at scale. So they take all our masters for us to use as triggers for matching reports. And then they take the
Yeah.
matching reports and they have their sub-publisher, global network of sub-publishers that actually sit like territory per territory and match the data reports between the PRO and between what they can scan. And this has been also, I mean, they've also been scaling their own operation, but in the past 2 or 3 years, we're just seeing enormous growth in our collection. I think this last quarter was like 60% quarter to quarter growth in collection, which was really incredible. Specifically in the US, we doubled our collection quarter to quarter because they're keep improving their operation and the way that they can match and find usage and then match it to the PRO information.
Yeah.
So
So they're like, sorry to cut you off, but so they're basically taking the sound recordings that you control using a service like a TuneSat or one of those
they're
fingerprinting
using
services
all
that
of them.
monitors TV. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
finds the matches and then looks at your performing rights organization reporting and then checks if they're actually reporting the amount of usage relative to their audit,
Exactly.
basically. Got it.
And
And then
of course,
they just annoy the heck out of the PROs and just make sure you're getting paid correctly. Shake the
yeah.
money out of the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Smart.
And in
Yeah.
a way, I think with what you build at Mogul is very similar, right? Because you can
Yeah.
get data from Spotify and match it with your publishing. And I think I keep saying that at the end, music copyrights are split into two avenues, right? Like the sound recording and the IP. And in
Hmm.
digital, you have codes for each, right? You have an ISRC for the recording, an ISWC for the IP. And of course, one IP piece or work could have a few different recordings. But at the end of the day, I think the only global, solution, dream solution for royalty collection in the digital age is if you had one global database that has all ISWCs and ISRCs in one place, and you can
It'd be
actually match
nice.
all the data. Yeah, that's my dream. I think I heard a few
Yeah.
people speak about it, but it's almost impossible probably to build unless all the PROs in the world would unite and all the labels in the world would unite to do it. But
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Yeah, getting everyone's sort of interests in, one place and incentivizing them to all come together. I have another question for you that I don't know if this is like a spicy question to ask or not. But I'm going to ask it if that's okay
go
to
for it.
stir the pot. So I
We're
know
here
like,
nobody here. It's just us.
oh yeah, right, right, right. So I know that like some of your competitors, if I understand this correctly, they have like a setup with their writers where they're not allowed to join performing rights organizations.
Hmm.
Um, and that allows them to, I think, get better deals with like broadcasters for sync because then they say, well, none of our writers are affiliated with any performing rights organization, so you're going to keep more money. And that's an incentive to like work with those catalogs. Um, what sort of like, if you don't mind me asking, your guys' sort of stance on that? And is that assumption correct? And
Wow, I have a lot to say. So first of all,
okay,
without
yeah,
mentioning who, definitely one of our main competitors, that's the way they operate. I honestly, personally think it's on, I would say, close to being a criminal way of operating, because what
oh
it
wow,
actually means, just to emphasize, it means they sign writers on a clause that says they would never be able to register under any PRO in the world ever. Meaning they would never be able to monetize everything as anything that they do as writers. And I think for a lump sum that they pay per work for their platform, nobody should sign such a deal. I think it doesn't make any sense. But worse than that, I think the assumption behind why they did this is a wrong assumption because at the end of the day, public performance is being collected for anything that's being public performed. And the broadcasters end up paying for anything they broadcast because that's
right,
how
still
PROs
goes
work.
out, yeah.
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 So at the end of the day, if it isn't matched, the PROs have the money undistributed. But I mean, and at the end, and the only reason that they're trying to say or saying telling writers to never register under PRO because they were under the assumptions it won't get tracked. I can honestly tell you it's not the way it happens. I mean, I even have proof from the
Mhm.
day before we were registered under any PRO. They keep fishing and finding usage because that's their job, right? PROs are here to protect writers. And this way of operating is basically so much against writers and their rights. So there's a big clash there. And at the
Mm,
end of the day, you can't really, there's no way to dismiss public performance royalties from being paid by a broadcaster.
mm, And yeah, got it. And so if you're a composer with Artlist, like you're allowed to be a part of a performing rights organization, it sounds
It's
like.
more
Yeah,
than that. We actually
yeah,
encourage and help our writers in case they're not registered with a
that's good.
PRO. And then we have an administration, a global administration for our publisher share, which basically means their writer share is also being managed much better. And I can
Mm,
tell you, I hear this, thank God, I hear this maybe once a week. One of our artists says my PRO statement just doubled, like they're getting so
yeah,
much
great.
money thanks to this operation. So, and for me, I can say it was something I would never give up on. Like, for me, it's all about partnering with artists and not building a tech company that just utilizes content for its all own well-being. And I think Artlist in general, we're a content company that, for creators, by creators. That's what we're here to empower. So we,
Yeah,
we make sure we do it on both ends, our
yeah.
users and
And
our
then
providers.
yeah, yeah, got it. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, no, I was always just curious about that one thing, and yeah, that's good insight. That's really interesting too. That like the money still goes out anyway. It's just
Yeah.
not getting claimed, and it probably gets like yeah, it goes into the black box as it were. But another question I had about Artlist, if you don't mind. So kind of going back to what I was
Actually, I
saying.
want to say I want to say one more thing just to
Oh yeah,
clarify.
yeah,
It's mainly because most of those agreements between PROs and broadcasters are blanket agreements. So they would get paid X amount from a broadcaster a year, and then they get reports.
right.
So if the reports don't match, they don't know how to distribute the money. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. That's the thing. I mean, not registering under a PRO won't save you from a publisher or like a company like Epidemic from, kind of trying to escape the PROs.
Interesting. Um, and then, Artlist, it like you kind of like I was saying earlier, it seems like it had some like pretty rocket ship growth, right? Like how many
Yeah.
how many employees, if you don't mind me asking? Is it? It's like,
It's now 500 employees.
oh, wow. Yeah, it's great. What's been like the hardest? So obviously you have your vertical, which is like the content, the rights, the metadata, working with the content creators. But there's also like the supply side of like people buying subscriptions. And I think now you guys are doing stuff with video now, right?
So artists, yeah,
Well,
sorry.
the question I was going to ask is like, what do you, in your opinion, kind of just being there early on to like today, what's been like the hardest part of Artlist to scale? You know?
Wow, it's a great question. So just to give you the full context, so Artlist started with a music catalog under a subscription for video creators, but very quickly I started scaling the music side and building the label and publishing side of things, and of course expanding our catalog. And it's a great, I mean, it's today it's like one of the biggest production houses I think in the world. We're producing about 2,000 songs a year for Artlist's music catalog. But from year two, since I joined, we started expanding into more and more catalogs for content creators. So we added the sound effects catalog, a footage catalog, eventually different tools and plugins for content creators, and now in the past year, some AI tools as well. Um, and the company was scaling. I mean, I think, of course, like most companies similar to us during COVID, we saw an amazing spike in users because, people were left at home creating a lot more content, not being able to film, so they needed a lot more stock footage as well. So, and we scaled, I think this was 2020, we scaled. I mean, I think I recruited about 50 people in 1 year or something. I mean, it was insane. So I can tell you, I definitely been through a rocket ship or a skyrocketing scaling situation. And I think well, I feel I learned so much from it. I think first and foremost is that if you have like a very clear goal and you're moving fast, and if you're moving really fast when you scale so much, there are two things that I think are the most important that I've learned. One is you have to keep restructuring and refining what you're doing and how you're doing it because everything is moving, and you have to kind of keep the source energy of what this is all about. Like, why are we doing this, right? Like the main kind of incentive for everything, but never commit to any kind of process or even a culture or way of doing things or structures of doing things. So basically, I think at Artlist every year we're changing our structure. There's not hasn't been 1 year that I've been operating under the same kind of layout.
Mhm.
I think I really learned how agility is like a necessity when you scale so much. I mean, you can't scale if you're stiff. You're gonna go floor by floor. You can't really fly up high very quickly. Um,
Yeah. But is the change in the org chart though is that a cultural thing? Like everyone at Artlist knows the company's going to change and that's part of the culture, or is that a lagging indicator of just all of the growth and more of a natural thing? Does that make
it's
sense?
a great question. It's actually both. I think there are some things that change as you go especially when it was like, I think in the middle of these 7 years, there were like 2 years that everything was so fast that these changes even sometimes happened during work.
Yeah.
Other than that, we always do this kind of like retrospect review of how are things looking and if we should change. And I think honestly, in the past 7 years, I've operated under any kind of managerial structure you can imagine, from waterfall to metrics to independent to whatever you want to call it. Um, and I think eventually you find a way to kind of, how you want to operate, but then you start revisiting more like processes and internal operations and stuff like that. And of course, now with AI, there's a lot of efficiency moves you can make in your own organization. But I think the second thing I learned, which is probably the most important one, is the ability to delegate, because again, I kind of started from doing everything with two hands, and then I had one assistant and then two assistant. It was a small team. Small teams are amazing because it's so great and easy to operate. Um, and by the way, that's another lesson. There's a size where a team is too big and it's just too hard to operate it, and you have to just divide it. There's no way you can operate one team that's too large. And at the height of my managerial journey, I guess I had like 70 employees under my authority, and I found myself basically not working. I felt like I'm not
Right.
working. I'm just managing people. And I remember we even spoke about having some similar experiences at SoundCloud, if I remember. Um, and then I
Yep.
think so my biggest lesson was, and it's funny because in many ways I felt that's exactly what I used to do as a producer, producing artists' records, is to empower people, like to really empower people. And empowering people is not an easy task because you need to be able to give them direction and vision, and then manage them without micromanaging them and empowering them as individuals to really be driven and make the work on their own. And I think that was my biggest lesson, because then of course I did a lot of mistakes as well to learn from, like to learn to how to actually do it. And I think my biggest insight about that is like, or what I understood was, I lead from behind, I call it. Like I like showing a vision and then going back to like the bottom row to see how they're doing and just help them push forward,
Mm, mm,
then just keep the gap between the vision and where the people are at. And I think a lot of managers make the mistake of, here's my vision and now I'm going to operate in the middle between the vision and the team. And if
hmm.
you want to scale, you're going to have to make your team be the one that actually drives forward into the vision.
Yeah.
Hard also because I'm used to doing a lot of things on my own, operational, logistical, production, anything it is. So it was a big lesson to me to learn to kind of jump between those two positions.
Yeah.
And
That's awesome.
I remember you had similar experiences at SoundCloud, so it'll be great if you want to share about that.
Just like around like scaling and like lessons around scaling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I learned a lot. I think for me, my story is we like grew repost profitably to I think when we sold, we were like maybe 15 people. And I think that kind of looking back, and then once we got into SoundCloud between me and Joey, we scaled quite significantly. When we launched SoundCloud for artists, I don't know the exact number. It was definitely more than 50 people, like under our team. And it might have been closer to like, I think 80 at one point. But I think the thing I like learned about myself was I I really liked when the company was like around 15, 20 people, because what was really nice about that kind of organization is everything's really flat, right? Like you hired, hopefully you hire some good people and everyone kind of owns their own thing. Or maybe you have like a team of like, one layer of management, a couple groups of like two or three people. But everyone kind of owns their own thing, and everyone, if you build like a nice sort of like family-esque type culture,
Yeah.
it can be a really good quality of life, and you can get. I don't know. I believe you can do really big things with big teams. I think the big lesson I learned at SoundCloud when we kind of went through the scale was it was the first time I'd ever been in an organization where I managed someone who managed someone who managed someone who managed someone. I think like there was actually like a five layer like uh like of people,
Hierarchy.
like yeah, which like the skill set of being able to like lead a team when it's layered like that is completely different, right, than that early stage startup. It's a completely different set of skills. It's leading through culture. I think exactly to your point, it's like knowing when and where to like get your hands dirty, and focus on the smaller things, but also knowing exactly where to be hands off and let people fail. Like where are the places where you can let someone fail and learn. um, and yeah, I think ultimately those were sort of the soft skills I think that I learned going through that process. Um, but yeah, just knowing myself. I mean, when I was reporting to Mike Weissman, who was the CEO of SoundCloud, I remember we did a performance review, and his main thing for me was if you were what's it called, a superhero, you'd be the Hulk. Like you just my superpowers, I can just run through brick walls and I get shit done, right? But I leave glass and rubber and brick like all around me, right? Like I'm pretty messy and sloppy. And so you know, I kind of had this realization where I was like, I think I'm better kind of on a smaller team, like really getting my hands dirty, like moving the things I want to move forward, like forward myself, as opposed to making sure process is tight. And that was sort of just like a personal learning for myself, but it was interesting. Yeah, it was a good experience. It was hard
Yeah,
for
it's
sure.
definitely, I mean, it's a very interesting and very hard experience. I can definitely
Yeah.
relate. I think also one more thing I learned is that if you build good systems, then
Yeah.
it becomes much easier. And the way I try to build it is like, I show a vision and then I have my own way of easily viewing what's happening. And I
Hmm.
remember I kept telling to my team, like, if there's something great and there's something wrong, I should know about it. And anything else, you should just go. And then mainly from their mistakes, I would learn how to kind of redirect and fix it. But I always made sure I can really overview everything and be in touch. Because I think, again, a lot of managers think, or leaders in big organizations think they could be just vision and a little bit below, but you actually need
Yeah.
to be very well covered across the organization and have very good overview of everything. And then you need to learn to let go and not touch it too much. And I'm very similar to you because I'm used to being more of an entrepreneur than a manager. And I think what you
Yeah.
described is the conflict between being an entrepreneur and being somebody that
An
manages an organization. It's a
executive.
totally
Yeah.
different thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Um, I have another question actually. So the I feel like you probably do a lot of like artist discovery at Artlist, right? Like you're trying to
Of course.
find like people to bring in. Like I feel like right now such a hot topic is data in the music industry. Like some people have the school of thought that like record labels and music companies, they're just signing things off of TikTok now, and it's a little almost like it's gone a little too data heavy, and there's like
Yeah.
not enough like part, like, oh, I saw this person at the show, they're incredible, you're like vouching for
Yeah.
them in the board, in the boardroom at Universal Music or whatever.
Yeah.
Like what's sort of your process these days when because I'm sure there's a lot of artists who would love to get a paycheck from you and like compose music and stuff.
Yeah.
Like what's your decision making process, and how does data fit into all of that?
That's an amazing topic, I think, and very interesting. And of course, something I deal with on a daily basis. And I think, there's the title data driven, and I think a lot of
Hmm.
people mistake it to that to as if the data is the actual driver of the decision. I try to use that data either as an enforcement for my intuition or to help me discover new intuitions, but I would never rely solely on data. And I think my biggest insight from working like that for 7 years now, when you talk about content or art and data, you have to consider that there's always going to be some sort of limited capacity for the data to actually convey what's actually happening. And I can give you a lot of examples. Like we have a song on Artlist. It's tagged with various tags, right? It would be cinematic, classical, rock, for example. We have songs like that and a few different moods, and it would appear on a few different places on the platform. So if we look on, let's say, our download success on the cinematic genre, you have to consider there are other places where people could see that song or other reasons why they wanted to download that song, right? So any kind of point of data that you're looking at when it comes to content, you have to remember it's very limited. So I always say you have to look at it as one point of view out of many different points. And more importantly, is you never have to think about it as if it's one data point that connects to the next one with one line. It's like this kind of
Yeah.
neural network. Even if you try to understand like how things really interconnect, that's when you start really seeing insight. And it's kind of hard to explain, but you have to be very, very familiar with the actual content in music to be able to really view music related data and understand it. And I think
Mm.
data driven should be considered more as something that helps you drive forward better or faster, but it shouldn't kind of ignite your process. And I think a lot of people in the music industry are actually waking up to that recently because like you said, there was this wave of labels just signing off data, like sitting on chart metrics, looking for where the numbers really pop. And they forgot something very important that people don't relate to data, they relate to art and artists and stories. And these spikes online are normally very short span. And if there's like nothing behind it, it's going to
Yeah.
last for 1 week. And they ended up signing, I think so many artists were signed in this decade that had half a song success. I'm saying half because it's just the one on the 30 seconds on TikTok that were very successful, but never ended up with a successful record, successful touring career, or artist career in general. And I think now people are starting to wake up and understand that data is just a tool, and it's like a way of observing, which we never had, right? Because like 20 years ago, you could listen to the radio or go to see who's playing where and who has a better, bigger audience or more engaged audience, but you could never have a data Excel sheet showing you who's bigger than who, right?
Right.
So again, I think it's if you know how to connect it to your own intuition, then you're doing great. And I think what we ended up doing at Artlist to answer your question more directly, so we're trying to use data as kind of like mapping out what's happening
Mm.
more than making a decision. And we built a system that we call triggers. And triggers means we're trying to see hotspots of what should we produce next? What kind of music do we need? And of course, there's no one answer because we're producing about 2,000 songs a year at this point. And our user base is very, very eclectic and global. So it's like we have various needs. We don't have one need. We have more popular genres, we have more popular styles, but it's very, very eclectic. I mean, I did anything from signing classical, ancient, ethnic Japanese music to like the most cutting edge hip hop and pop tracks you
Nice.
can imagine, and anything in between. So it's very, very kind of versatile. And so we try to use data more as a map, and then we navigate
Yeah.
intuition more than anything else. And when it comes to signing artists, the more we progressed, the more I made it more and more like old school A&R. I have to say, like we would never really use data to scout. We use data to understand what we need better, and then we find talent just like you would look for talent. And I think the moment we started doing that, everything got better. We're just looking for great talent, people with very high work ethic, that we trust that we can work with and create amazing work with. And then we would match the artist to what we actually need in the catalog, to that trigger, that musical trigger. We call it from
Mhm.
trigger to deliver. That's the title that we have.
Yeah,
And there's
that's cool.
a lot in the process in the middle, of course. And then what we do is what I call data recycling. So we would see what we ended up delivering and see how well it succeeds, and if it also reflected well on what we expected it would be. So if let's say, and I can tell you so many stories. I mean, I looked at that data map on my first year at Artlist, and I had this intuition more than anything, nothing that, not like from my brain, more from my heart and soul. Looking at the data, I had this intuition that like a modern sounding blues track is something that our users would really love. But like, I mean, like really modern with very strong
Yeah.
both modern production and blues elements. And it was more of an intuition than an insight. And I ended up producing such a track, which became the most popular track on Artlist that year and was placed probably on millions of different videos, and also became that artist's most successful track ever. um, and it was just based on that intuition. But what happened was I had that intuition or that data idea or insight, and then I found an artist and I matched it very well. I saw that he can make
Yeah.
that.
You A&R'd it,
Yeah.
basically.
So
Yeah.
I think that's the future of A&Ring, right? Like trying to understand what's happening there. But when you look for talent, you should just look for talent. I think the best example this year is Somber. Somber is like such an incredible breakthrough, and such a, he deserves it so much. He's just great. He's not that artist that spiked on TikTok and then the label cut the numbers. And I mean, he had the numbers, but he also had the music and the songs
Yeah.
and the artist brand, and like the whole thing is the story, and it's so complete and so holistic. And I was very happy to see how he broke through. I actually started listening to him a little bit before Warner signed him, so before he got picked up off the data charts. But I
Yeah.
think they did a great move. Like it was a combination of intuition and data. They
Yeah.
used data to map the field, but not to navigate it.
Yeah. This is one of those things I've done like a complete 180 on. So my last startup, um, it was I was like Mr. Data, like only sign people off the data. And literally, if you wanted to work with Repost, you had to connect your Sound Cloud account via API or your Spotify account. And we literally scan your account, look at the average plays per upload, different territories. It actually got quite sophisticated. We created you can grab a popularity score via Spotify's API, and we would auto accept or reject you strictly based off the data. We actually prided
Never will.
ourselves that we were a company that only looked at the data. And when we sold to SoundCloud, um, we had about 10,000 artists, I think 10 or 11,000 artists. 300 of them made up 95% of the revenue or something like that. So it was one of those things where like, I think looking back on it, I think if I were to like start a digital distributor or label or like content business, I think I would like probably 180 it. I think I would like make sure the music's good before bringing in, as opposed to, I mean, exactly to your point, like using the data a little bit more as a leading indicator as opposed, or
Yeah.
yeah, a backing indicator as opposed to the main indicator.
Yeah. I
So
think the word again is intuition, and help it drive you, not be the igniter or the actual decision maker.
yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. I remember you did it that way, and it's an interesting experience to look at.
Yeah, but a lot of the artists who had the data, they weren't making any money a year later. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It was like it was very it was not a good indicator for like, will this person be doing well a year from now. It was just they're doing good right now, and a lot of stuff just kind of goes like that,
Yeah, again, because a
Yeah.
specific moment success metric is very specific. It's like one point. The question
Yeah,
is,
it's a
if it
snapshot.
connects
Yeah.
to other points, then it becomes like a big deal.
Yeah.
Um, and I think
Okay.
a lot
So
of people mistaking working with data, we're trying to find those little peaks and points, but it's not about that. It's
no,
about understanding the holistic neural network of how it could actually assist you. And I see somebody here,
yeah,
data looks at the past. That's true as well.
can't look in the future. Yeah. Okay. I think we're close to time, but let's ask the
Oh,
question.
wow.
Thoughts on AI? Should we
Yeah.
should we do it?
We
That's
managed to
the hot
go
topic.
through almost an hour with almost not mentioning the word AI,
I
which
know,
is,
but we got to do it, right? I mean, it's like the hot thing.
yeah. Wow.
Or
I have so many
or
thoughts on
either
that.
people will like this or they're all going to leave because they're like so sick of hearing
Yeah.
about the
Also, if
whole
people
AI
want to ask
stuff.
more questions before we're out of time, it's the time to do it. If you guys want to, here on the chat, we're seeing the chat. Um, wow, I have to say, I mean, I feel with AI, I think I spend most of my day trying to understand it and research it and learn what's happening. And I think that's one thing that you can say, which is really incredible. I mean, I don't remember a time in this decade where I had to spend so much time just to try to keep myself updated with everything that's happening on a daily basis, really. And same at Artlist. I mean, we kind of entered the AI space a year ago with voiceover tools, AI voiceover tools. Um, and I think our approaches were trying to really connect our knowledge in the content space and curate AI in a way that creators can actually use it. Um, and then last April, we started a visual AI tool, again, supported by external models. So we're more like curating the tools into the hands of creators. And I think I mean, there's so many things I can say, like 8 minutes won't do probably. So I think the only thing I can say is, first of all, I think we're in a moment of a bubble where it's so hyped that you have to consider everything is not going to stay this way. Like it's going to change either way we look at it. I think, and I want to believe, I'm trying to be very optimistic about it, and I believe that AI would eventually become more and more modificational, more than generative, meaning it would become a tool and not just a one-stop shop creating machine for content. Um, and of course, I'm talking about AI in the content sphere or music sphere, right? Not other because AI is going to affect so many different things. Um, but I think when it comes to art and creation, people will always want to create, and it turns out that for some funny reason, one of the first industries it's taking over is the creation industry or the creative industry. Somebody told me, I wanted AI to do my laundry and accounting, not to make a song, because I like making a song. It's what I like to do in life, right? So at the end of the day, and you see how Suno, started with a generative tool, but now they're building a DAW because they understand the creative process is still what people are really interested in. Um, so I think the more it evolves with music and with art, it's just going to become more of how does it integrate into the creative process? How does it enhance the creative process? And there I see like enormous opportunity because in one hand, it's lowering the bar like so anybody can access and create content. And the romantic side of that is that a lot of people that are very creative in mind but never had the tools could all of a sudden create these things. The darker side of it is you're going to have so much slap, I think you call it, right? Like so much content uh, being created and kind of maybe overloading or oversaturating the market, which is a big problem in my opinion because it's already very oversaturated. But then on the other side, it's also kind of hiring the bar of when something actually becomes art, right? So like I think real artists and real creators all of a sudden their starting point to create something is much higher. So I believe they can also achieve higher results. And those higher results, I think, when it gets really interesting, and you already see it, I spend some time every week just listening in a few generative platforms, trying to see what's happening in generative music. And nothing is not really exciting yet, but you see how things are starting to break through a curve or like kind of push the curve of what we used to know. So there's all these new genres emerging, a lot of blending of genres that nobody could ever imagine. We just experimented with it and created this kind of like Afro-Cuban metal. It's something nobody
Sure.
would ever probably never produce, but all of a sudden with AI we did it and it made sense, and now we know how to recreate it and So it's inspiring to go into higher domains as well, which I think is very interesting on its own.
Mm.
That being said, it's also very clear it's going to affect at least parts of the music industry, probably the licensing industry, pretty greatly. But yeah, I also feel like it's becoming harder and harder to predict, because it's such a fast-moving situation. Curious to hear what you're thinking about it and what other people here on the chat are thinking about it.
Yeah. I have sort of my like selfish hopes for it as it relates to mobile, and then I sort of have like feelings around like higher level licensing and attribution. I think with Mogul, the thing that we run into and why I'm excited about AI is, if an artist joins Mogul and they connect a DistroKid and a BMI account, that's very different than a major label artist connecting Universal Music, the distributor they worked with before, Universal Music, the performing rights organizations, and that they work with the different territory carve outs, right? There's completely different like sort of stacks as it relates to who artists work with from a royalty and payment standpoint, as well as a completely different, like a really, really wide spectrum of like how educated they actually are, right? You have like artists with really, really complicated setups that know nothing and artists who know a lot. Artists with really, really simple setups who know a lot and know a little. And so I think for us, where we're sort of helping to centralize an artist's universe as it relates to their royalties and payouts, um, you know, I think ultimately, like from a UI standpoint, we have a long way to go because it's about how do you put the right thing in front of the right artist at the right time that'll be the most impactful in a way that they will understand. And I
Yeah,
think that a more conversational model, a model that can learn, a model that can like basically I can, I'm kind of explaining what might be coming with Mogul here. But putting everything I know into, effectively an LLM and then, having it basically right there to walk a person through it, I think might be a better way for us at Mogul to like solve the problem than the way we're currently trying to do it. And I think that's something that we couldn't have done
without it.
five years ago. So I think to me that's something something I'm really excited about, and we're exploring at Mogul to just make artist royalties and business in better shape. And so they can ask questions to their data and things
Yeah,
like that
okay.
too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's where
yeah,
AI
and then
becomes very useful when it's big data and accounting and a lot of information that needs to be summarized and understood. That's where AI could be leveraged for just amazing, incredible things.
yeah,
So
totally, yeah. And then
when it comes to
the
content, it's more, I think, when it comes to art and content, it's a bit more
a little
complicated.
different. Yeah, and then I'm personally a little nervous about the licensing discussions right now between Suno and Udio and the major labels. I mean, I saw this happen with social video with like TikTok and Snap. The payouts from those platforms are just terrible. And this is my take. The reason for that is because Universal and the majors came in, they took huge payouts from these social platforms,
Mhm.
and in exchange for those huge payouts, they came up with a revenue per use model as opposed to revenue per play, which is, in my opinion, why like the revenue isn't like as good long term, because what ends up happening is then the rest of the industry has to follow suit because the majors anchor through those licensing discussions. And so my concern is that like a similar thing will happen, and I don't know if this is the case or not. I might be totally wrong, but it seems like this is a real opportunity to force some of these platforms to really build in attribution and make sure that like
Let me say,
they're
yeah.
actually paying out royalties based on use. And I think if that doesn't happen, and they kind of opt to just take a blanket payout, I think that's gonna be kind of shitty to see, in my opinion.
I
But
think with AI, you have a much bigger problem than what we had with current digital usage and deals, because, like you said, basically there's no attribution engines yet. And even if they were, and I think a lot of people don't think about, let's say the most optimistic scenario is there'll be this incredible tool that can actually understand for each generated piece of music who should get paid. You're going to be dealing with so much nano royalties, and who knows better than you how hard it is to collect current state of royalties. So
yeah,
my big question is, even if you had the data, who is going to handle all these nano royalties? Is it ever going to make sense? And I agree that I think most likely what we're going to see in the next few months is some sort of a regulation between the majors and these companies, and it's probably going to mainly benefit the tech giants more than the actual copyright owners and artists. And I think artists should be very aware that in most cases they're supposed to have an opt-in opportunity, like they can also opt out. And I think it's very important to know that. And I think artists need to ask a lot of questions into how am I going to actually get paid from all this? Um,
Yeah, you know, it would be kind of a cool vibe code weekend project actually is like, I wonder if, what if you just made a website where someone could like authenticate or connect their Spotify so you know that they're that artist, and then it's just a public page that says I'm okay with, use of my music and training models, or or contact me here if you want to like talk licensing, and at least it's like public. And I don't
and I
know,
think,
that was just
yeah,
like I come up with a lot of ideas.
interesting.
That was the idea you just gave me,
I
but
think I saw somebody yesterday that did something similar called Humanable. I think
oh yeah, oh cool,
a little
check it
bit
out.
like what you just said. But I think
Okay.
there are a lot of solutions, and I think the main question is how the music industry is going to frame it in front of these
Oh
AI
yeah.
tech companies, because there's also another way of thinking about it where you would create closed circuit models, which is something YouTube already did a few years ago, where I can generate something inspired by a specific artist or a specific catalog, and then the payout is much more clear. I just saw BeatStars, for example, is launching specific models per producer. So you can use inspiration from a specific producer, but you would pay him for his IP.
Mm,
So I think,
interesting. It's cool.
because Suno is such a widely trained model, it's basic. I mean, I never see a way with it where it would never be ever be able to properly pay out with proper attribution to actually who actually is supposed to be paid out. I mean, think about it. You would have a generated piece of audio that was trained on maybe millions of songs, and each song might have 20 different writers and copyright owners on both master and publishing side. This is like an enormous scheme to understand who's supposed to get what, you know?
Yeah, I agree, but like you could have said the same thing about Google when YouTube was getting sued by Viacom, and um, they ended up creating Content ID, right?
But I think it's still a little different here because Content ID finds a song and they have song registration with the mod with AI. I think a lot of people don't know this about AI, know this fact about AI models. We in our current world, nobody knows how models really operate. There's no really
Right.
way to understand how it operates. And if you train it with big data, it's almost impossible to trace back exactly what happened.
Mm,
There's definitely like creative ways to solve it. I'm sure, like again, like building those closed circuit models or building a fingerprinting system where it actually checks the regenerated audio and trying to understand at least to which sectors of music it's supposed to pay back into. And there's a lot of things we can think of. The question is if anybody's going to build those. Hopefully they will.
yeah. It's very interesting times. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Tom's back. We're getting the boot.
The
No,
man.
Sounds
you're
like
not. I want you to carry on. It's just getting juicy now. You're
it's
talking
okay.
about really crazy, interesting stuff. Ori, I know you didn't want to bring up AI, but I'm glad you did. I mean, how can you not? It's the
Yeah, can't avoid
600
it.
pound, pink elephant in the middle of the room. Gentlemen, that was really cool. And it's a pleasure to feature you here and learn your stories. I have a feeling, Jeff, you've got another big exit in your future, in the near future, I hope. Couple people were asking me while y'all were talking, are your companies hiring right now? Are you all looking to add headcount to your ranks? Because you've got several new fans on here.
Yeah, we have no public. We're a pretty small team. We're still a pretty small startup. That's a choice mainly. Um, but yeah, we are going to probably be putting up a job post shortly for like a mid-level content operations role. So really assisting with things like quality control, registrations, a little bit of customer support. So that would be like sort of a more entry to mid-level type role. Some knowledge of the music industry is good. Um, as well as likely a growth marketing hire as well too.
Ori, how about your company?
So Artlist is always hiring in the past 7 years, and you can check out Artlist jobs to see what is actually up. But in the US, our only team in the US, other than myself here in LA, is our sales team in New York. And I actually think they do have a few positions opened, and it's a great team in New York selling our subscription direct to brands. So it's a great team, and if you see anything there that you like, you're more than welcome to approach me, and I'll help you submit your resume.
Well, From their lips to God's ears, folks, there's two opportunities for you. Gentlemen, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. To the audience, I promised you'd leave smarter and more inspired than you arrived. I think we delivered on that. And we will see you in 2 weeks. We're not here next week because we're going to be at the Mondo Music Conference. If anyone's there, please hit me up and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Take care, folks.
Thank you,
Thank
Tom.
you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.